Good afternoon. My name is Luz Maria Frias. Can you hear me? Is the mic working okay? Okay.
Oh, okay.
I serve as president and CEO of YWCA Minneapolis. Our mission is eliminating racism, empowering women and girls. In terms of our leadership structure, we have 50% of our C-suite are people of color, identify as people of color, and 60% of our senior leaders at the VP level are also people of color. And our board, which is 41 women strong, also identifies strongly 40% people of color and indigenous people as well. The beauty and strength of having that type of diversity within our leadership structure at any point of that is a strength that comes with it in the contributions that come from the lived experiences that people have had that directly impact the work that we do on a regular basis. So I'll give you an example. When you think about talking about problem solving, we think about the various lived experiences that people might have. And the analogy that I often draw is one with investments. We hear often enough over and over that when you look at your investment portfolio for retirement purposes, you have to diversify to ensure that you have the different points of view that are coming in and the strengths and weaknesses that are covered. Similarly speaking, when you're talking about a diverse leadership structure, that type of strength comes through in the various scenarios that you are faced with on a daily basis. So we're extremely blessed to have our representation be one that matches in the greater community. We have some of our former leaders and leaders here in the room as well, and I know that we have more to do. We don't see it as us reaching our stopping point. We know that there's much more work to do, and we're happy to share that as the comments and questions come up.
Hello everyone, thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here. My name is Lonnie Humphrey. I'm with Best Buy, and my job on a day-to-day basis is I run a distribution center. So I have the privilege of running our largest facility in the West Coast. So we're responsible for about 200. Oh, can't hear the mic. Thank you. Is that better? Oh, there it is. Is that on? Is that better? Yes. All right. So sorry about that. So again, Lonnie Humphrey is my name. I'm with Best Buy. I run a West Coast supply chain operation for our company, and I guess I would say the biggest thing for diversity, I look at it in several different categories. The main thing that's been good for diversity as far as Best Buy is concerned is profitability. So a lot of people would think about, oh, it's the right thing to do, it's a good thing to do, it feels good. It's profitable. It really is. So on average, our stores that have more diverse leadership that matches the workforce are 8 to 12% more profitable. So you have more revenue, you have more connections, you have more things like that going on from a business standpoint. So it is the right thing to do. It does make a lot of sense to do those things, but it's a bottom line indicator as well. We found that in our 1,255 stores, that those that have the more diverse leadership teams with the same or equivalent amount of training bring in more revenue. And when I talk about diversity, I'm not just talking about skin color, I'm not just talking about sexual orientation, those things. I'm also talking about diversity of thought. So the stores that we had leaders, when we do our indicator, it's called it's opinion survey as well, but our indicators that had leadership types that were similar at all leadership levels were less profitable. So diversity also includes thought. So those thought leaders that have a different angle are more profitable because you just think of things in a different way. So when I think about why diversity, it's about bottom line, not just skin color.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I am Tanya Hampton, and because I'm in the room with Juris Doctors, I'm Dr. Tanya Jackman Hampton, and my dad's not in the room. I'm not a medical doctor by any means, but I'd like to sort of at least honor your space and say that I'm not an attorney. I'm a certified paralegal, but that is my background, and I'm delighted to be here. What I would say about the work that I do is twofold in that it answers James's question as well as just the work that I do on a regular basis. So how I look at diversity and inclusion is really thinking about how, as leaders within our organizations and those leaders themselves doing the work on a day-to-day basis, regardless of what they do, doesn't mean that they have to be in the diversity and inclusion department or function, but that as business leaders or individuals in organizations, we are driving the agenda to really think about how do we challenge ourselves on an ongoing basis and not check the box. So my pet peeve is diversity is not a program. It in fact is an initiative for the organization to really think about how does diversity get integrated into its strategic plan, and also what are the goals and metrics associated with that. And then on an ongoing basis that they are really thinking about diversity inclusion from a cultural humility perspective, meaning it's a lifelong journey, and that you have to think about every part of your business and think about it from a workplace, marketplace, and workforce standpoint.
Good afternoon. I'm Gay Adams-Massey. I'm CEO of YWCA St. Paul. I spent more than 20 years, I won't tell you exactly how many, as a healthcare attorney, working as a subsidiary general counsel for United Health Group and then a senior deputy general counsel. And one of the things I spent a lot of time on was trying to drive diversity and inclusion initiatives for our organization. Now I'm serving as CEO of an organization, as Lou's mentioned, that's dedicated to eliminating racism and empowering women. And so I'm in a place where this is a top priority. It's what we're about. And like Minneapolis, we have a board that's 60% people of color, a staff that is majority, senior leadership majority people of color, lots of women. It's a very different landscape than the one I was in when I was in corporate America. So I spend my time, one of the values, our question was about the value of diverse leadership. Having that kind of diverse teams means exactly what you've heard from others. We have more insight, more connection, broader understanding that lets us be more effective in our work. And it's where I am sitting now, it's something that's recognized, valued, and really something we strive for. And we understand that the key to it is really around the culture of the organization so that people feel valued and included. And that was, you know, it's different given the kind of organization you're in, how readily you can adapt to those kinds of, to understand, creating the kind of culture you need to keep people engaged and get numbers on board. But I think that's what we all have to be about, making it happen in whatever setting we're in.
Thank you all. One of the things that comes to my mind is I want to remind folks again, if you have questions, write them down, pass them to the middle. We'll ask them during the session as well. So one thing about finding diverse leaders of color is they're like unicorns. You hear about them, you think they're there, but when it comes time to recruit them, you can't find them. You know, where are the diverse leaders of color? Where do I find them? Tell me about your organization. Anybody can answer this question. Tell me about what your organization does to make sure you not only find and recruit people from diverse backgrounds, diverse areas of thought as well, but also what do you do to retain them as well? Because I hear in Minnesota there's a challenge as far as recruiting, but also more of a challenge as far as retaining talented leaders from diverse backgrounds. And anyone can take that question. Lucy?
I can start. When we have a posting for a position, whether senior leadership or any other level in the organization, we keep it open until we have the right pool. And by what I mean the right pool, we're not counting numbers. In particular, we don't have a percentage of any particular type of ethnicity or race or orientation and things of that sort. We want to make sure that that pool is reflective of our community. So we will keep it open, and if the applicants are not coming in, then we proactively use our networks to get the folks in, to get the applicants. So we're very intentional about making sure that we are recruiting and that folks who typically have not had access to our organization as an employer know about us. We have about 500 employees, so we're a fairly large organization. We have centers both in St. Paul and in Minneapolis, so it's really important for us to engage the community. In terms of retention, we create a culture that for us it's a culture add, not a culture fit. And I think that's a big difference in in mainstream, maybe dominant organizations where when folks are hiring, they ask, well, is it a culture fit? If you flip the equation and ask yourself, is it a culture add? That's where you really pivot the conversation. We also create a very welcoming environment with our mission, and I'm going to make sure you know about our D&I work that we have. It's called Include, and we're branded. We're literally right outside the door here. We live that mission. We live that work. The commitment comes from my position down. So as CEO, every Friday I send out an email that ties a quote to the mission of our work as well as what's going on in the community. So our employees, I might not see the 450 employees that are not in our building or so on a daily basis, but I'm connected to them every day, every week by the writings that I send out. That's called engagement, and it leads to retention.
Thank you. Anyone else want to tackle that one? You going to add to that?
Retention? I'll say a little something about that. More from my experience in a corporate setting. Retention is really about inclusion and people feeling valued. And often it's feeling like you're not the only one and the odd person out who doesn't have mentorship, sponsorship, and the support to advance and see possible career growth. And all of that, in my view, boils down to the culture that's created to support all employees. And I think being very purposeful about that is what's critical to retaining diverse staff.
I'll add a simple one because we're on the topic of being inclusive. And a former employer, one of the things that we did pretty explicitly or on purpose was welcoming people, right? So in the state of Minnesota, it's quite, I think, being a native of Minnesota, I can speak on behalf of maybe myself anyways, that it's not occasionally where I will go somewhere and someone won't speak. And at my former employer, we made an attempt and an intentional aspect of the work that we did to just welcome people, whether it was in the hallway or even to the patient base. So ensuring that if you are at the hospital facility and you look like you're wandering around, we were helping you and escorting you to your next location. And not only did we do that just for patients, but if you were an employee at a facility that you hadn't normally been at,